I'm Daniel, 42, freelance photographer, and apparently the only one in my family who still believed in responsibility. I wired them 90 grand on a Thursday. By Sunday, Dad was already texting about the leaking roof. Funny how silence costs more than gratitude, especially when you're not the golden child. And when I found the will sitting on their kitchen counter, the only name in it wasn't mine. If this hits close to home, tell me where you're watching from. I'm listening. I wired them 90 grand on a Thursday morning, just after finishing my second cup of coffee. The bitter kind I brewed on autopilot, more for routine than for taste. The cursor blinked on my bank screen, daring me. I hesitated just long enough to question everything, then clicked Submit. 2 minutes later, the transfer was confirmed. $90,000 gone. For the next hour, I just sat there. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the ceiling fan. I didn't move. I didn't breathe too deeply. Just sat at my tiny kitchen table, surrounded by old bank statements, unopened mail, and a fading yellow sticky note that read, "Call Mom." It was my handwriting, but I don't remember when I wrote it. Spokane Valley had just started to thaw. Spring here isn't romantic. It's more like watching a tired man stretch after a long nap. The sidewalks were streaked with gravel from the snow trucks, and the air smelled like wet bark. I had hoped the wire transfer would bring some warmth, some recognition. Or maybe just a simple thank you from Earl. Instead, 2 hours later, I got a voicemail from Linda, my mom. "Hi, honey. We got the transfer. That was generous of you. Your stepdad's on the roof now, actually. Says there's still a leak from last winter. Anyway, thank you. We'll talk soon, okay?" Click. "No, we love you. No, we'll pay you back when we can." Just her voice, soft, cautious, like she was reading off a grocery list. I played the message twice. The first time I listened. The second, I tried to hear something deeper. Anything. Nothing. Then, around dusk, a text lit up my screen. "Earl, if you really care about your mother, there's still the roof. And the plumbing. Let me know." That was it. No greeting. No punctuation. Just instructions. I stared at that text like it might turn into something else. Maybe he'd follow up with a joke, or even a "we're grateful." But no. It just sat there, cold and efficient. I didn't respond. Not right away. I just stood up, stretched my arms until my spine popped, and wandered to the window. From my second-floor unit, I could see the tops of dogwood trees just starting to bud. Downstairs, someone's kid bounced a basketball off the pavement, out of rhythm, over and over again. There's this feeling, I don't know if you've had it, when you do something big for someone you love, and afterward, instead of feeling closer, you feel alone. It's not disappointment, not yet. It's something quieter, like the early signs of a cold. I used to think money could buy peace, that if I gave enough, did enough, sacrificed enough, it would fix something. But all it ever bought was silence. And silence in a family like mine doesn't mean resolution. It just means you've earned yourself a few days before the next demand. Later that evening, I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich. The crusts burned. I ate it anyway. My phone buzzed once. Spam call. I ignored it. At 11:12 p.m., I sat back down at the same table, opened my laptop, and pulled out a thick manila folder labeled Will and Estate, Drafts. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe just to see if my name was still in it. Maybe to see how many pages long it was. I didn't find my name. I didn't find much of anything, just a few typed pages with draft stamped across the top, and a handwritten note from Earl that said, "Discuss with Linda. Need to remove Dan's name?" I stared at that sentence for a long time. You don't notice the moment love turns into duty. It doesn't announce itself. No alarms, no heartbreak song playing in the background. but years later you feel it, like interest collecting. Quiet, compounding, merciless. I closed the folder. Then, with one thumb press, I deleted Mom's voicemail. No rage, no tears, just deletion. Somewhere, beneath the hum of my fridge and the night air slipping through the window screen, I realized this wasn't about money anymore. And it hadn't been for a long, long time. My stepfather never hit me. Not once. No belts, no fists, no red marks to hold up like a flag and say, "Look what he did." But the words? They left bruises in places no one could see. And they didn't fade. I found Caleb's voicemail while sorting receipts. It was late afternoon, golden sunlight spilling across the dining table like a lazy cat. I'd let the mail pile up. Again, half-opened W-2s, credit card statements, one letter from the IRS that just said, "Important." Caleb's voice was rushed, almost sheepish. "Hey man, I hate to ask again, but could you spot me $2,000? Just for a couple weeks. I swear I've got a client lined up. Just waiting on a deposit. You'd be saving me, Dan. Please." He didn't say hi, or how have you been? Just, please. I stared at the phone like it might offer context. It didn't. Then, without warning, my brain served me a flashback. Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Linda's house. The kitchen reeked of burnt yams and resentment. I remember the turkey being dry, but Caleb was on fire. He'd flown in from Austin with a half-buttoned shirt and some kind of crypto app idea. It had already failed once. No users, no revenue. Just a domain name and a pitch deck with neon fonts. Earl beamed like the boy had just cured cancer. "You've got vision," he told Caleb, clapping him on the back. "You're not afraid to take risks. That's what this country needs. Entrepreneurs. Like you." I was across the table, helping Mom clear the dishes. I hadn't said a word about my promotion, associate director, regional finance firm, because I knew how the conversation would go. Earl would call it safe. Then he'd use that voice, the one where every compliment felt like a criticism in disguise. Later that night, I overheard him in the den with Linda, his voice muffled but sharp. "Daniel's too cautious. Always has been. Won't take a leap if you paid him." And she, God bless her, just sighed and said, "He's just built different, Earl." You know that. Built different. Like I was a faulty microwave. Back in the present, my phone buzzed again. Earl. I stared at his name until the screen dimmed. Then, after a long breath, I called him back. He picked up on the second ring. "Daniel," he said like it tasted sour. "Glad you called. Listen, Caleb's in a tight spot again." "Yeah," I said flatly. "I got his message." Earl didn't waste time. "He's your brother. Families step up. I told Linda, it's a shame how distant you've been lately. She worries about you." I didn't answer. "Look," he continued, "Caleb's not perfect. But he's got potential. You've always been consistent. But life's not about consistency. It's about heart. Caleb's got heart." I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "I wired you $90,000 4 days ago." "That's different," he snapped. "That was for the house, for your mother." "No," I said, calmer than I felt. "It was for peace, which apparently I still can't afford." There was a pause, not silence, just him recalculating. "Don't be dramatic, Daniel. You've always taken things so personally." I don't know what happened next. Something inside just clicked, like a drawer finally sliding into place. I hung up. Mid-sentence. That was new. I'd never done that before. No explanation, no apology, no, "Sorry, I just can't." Just click. For a moment, I sat there stunned. Then a strange calm settled over me, like warm water in a cold room. I walked back to the table, pushed the receipts aside, and opened my laptop. Not for work, just Muscle memory. Facebook was already open. Linda had posted 5 hours ago. So proud of my boys. Caleb just launched his second app. Second app? I stared at the screen like it might change. Maybe she meant to say first. Maybe it was a copy-paste mistake. But no, there it was. The family photo from 3 Thanksgivings ago, reposted like it was fresh. Caleb in the middle, arms draped over her, and Earl like a prince returning from war. Me cropped out completely. I closed the laptop, sat back, looked out the window. The sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Somewhere downstairs, someone laughed. Sharp, unfiltered. You know, I was raised to believe respect had to be earned, through hard work, honesty, consistency. Turns out in our house it was inherited, or married into. I didn't get either. But maybe, just maybe, I was done trying. We hadn't sat at that table in years, not properly, not all 4 of us. But the chairs remembered, the way they groaned when you leaned back, the leg that wobbled if you shifted too much, the way the surface always felt sticky no matter how often you wiped it. Dinner was at 6 o'clock. I arrived at 5:58, parked behind Earl's rusting Chevy, and sat in my car for 2 full minutes before heading in. The porch light flickered like it always did. Someone had propped open the storm door with a rock, like expecting me to hesitate. Inside, the house smelled of pot roast and something faintly sweet. Maybe candles. Maybe desperation. Linda met me at the door, apron on, hair curled tighter than usual. "You made it," she said, all breath and cheer. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, and I meant it, for now. She ushered me into the dining room like it was some kind of stage. Candles. Flickered in short glass holders. Napkins folded. Even the good plates, the ones with tiny blue flowers, were out. A sprig of rosemary rested neatly atop each plate, like a garnish no one asked for. Earl stood at the far end of the table, swirling something brown in a tumbler. "Daniel," he nodded. "Glad you're here." I nodded back. Linda flitted to the kitchen, calling over her shoulder. "Just pulling the roast out. Sit, sit." I did. The chair creaked beneath me. The air felt dense, like someone had boiled tension into the atmosphere. No music, no TV, just silverware clinking, and the occasional whistle of the old radiator in the hallway. Then came Caleb. Late, of course. He swung in with the breeze, all denim jacket and half-zipped boots. "Sorry, traffic," he said, sliding into the chair across from mine. He gave me a lopsided grin. "Hey, bro." "Hey." He poured himself a drink before the food hit the table. Linda brought the roast in with theatrical flair. "Ta-da! Old recipe, just like when you boys were young." I couldn't remember ever liking pot roast as a kid. I didn't say anything. We passed plates. Linda asked about the weather. Earl mentioned something about the neighbor's new fence. Caleb tapped away at his phone between bites. It all had the rhythm of dinner, but not the soul. Halfway through, Earl cleared his throat and raised his glass. "I just want to say," he began, "we're proud of this family. Caleb's back on his feet, trying again with that new tech thing. Shows grit, real resilience." Linda beamed. Caleb shrugged, eyes still on his phone. I stared at the roast, pushing a carrot across the plate like a pawn in a losing game. "Daniel," Earl added, "good of you to come. Been too long." That was it. No toast. No thanks for the money. Just good of you to come. Then Caleb looked up. "You still doing that camera thing? What was it, like sports interviews or something?" I blinked. "Financial content," I said. "Risk education, mortgage management videos. It's grown." "Cool," he said, already halfway through checking a notification. "I thought you did weddings or something." Linda jumped in. "Oh, Daniel has a great setup now. He even helped that family from, what was it? Idaho?" Montana, I said. She nodded. Right, always confusing. I took a sip of water. My fork hovered mid-air. And then I smiled. It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't bitter, just tired. I'm gonna head out, I said, placing my napkin on the table. Linda looked up, startled. But we haven't had dessert. I know. Stay, just a little longer. I stood. It was good to see everyone. Earl raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Caleb gave a mock salute. Linda started to rise, but I was already at the door. The porch was cooler than I remembered. The air smelled like lilacs and lawn fertilizer. I could hear the wind chimes from Mrs. Callahan's yard next door. Daniel! Linda's voice behind me, soft but urgent. She stepped onto the porch, arms folded like she didn't know what to do with them. Please don't let this be the last time. I looked at her. Really looked. The lines deeper around her eyes, the lipstick too pink for her age, the tremble in her fingers. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, I didn't leave early. Dinner did. Then I walked to my car, turned the key, and didn't look back until the turn at the end of Crestwood Drive. That house? It never changed. Not really. It just learned new tricks to stay the same. You know, family dinners are auditions. You sit down, say your lines, play your part, and if you don't deliver, well, you're written out. I didn't plan to go back. Not that soon. But I had a receipt they needed. For the plumber, the one Earl insisted on hiring after I covered the roof repairs. It wasn't even a big amount, $370.22, but it felt like the kind of thing people ask for later, just to claim you never followed through. So I went. The afternoon wind had picked up, clouds dragging their shadows across the Crestwood neighborhood. The lawn looked worse than it had last week, dandelions reclaiming the driveway, the mailbox door hanging open. I knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Still nothing. The porch creaked when I stepped back, ready to leave. But something made me try the door, not out of disrespect, just habit. It opened, the kind of open that says, "We never expected you to come by." Inside, it smelled like reheated soup and air freshener. The living room was dim, the blinds half closed, the television muted but still flickering with colors. A coffee cup sat on the end table, lipstick mark at the rim. I moved toward the kitchen. That's when I saw it. The will. It wasn't tucked away in a drawer or filed in a cabinet, just there. Sitting on the counter beside a yellow notepad and an uncapped pen. The top page said, "Last Will and Testament of Earl Raymond Thatcher and Linda Marie Thatcher." Typed, double-spaced, underlined in places. I wasn't snooping. I didn't flip through anything. The first page was face up. That was all it took. "To our beloved son, Caleb Thatcher," it read, "we leave the family residence at 218 Crestwood Drive, all possessions therein, and the 1999 Chevrolet Silverado." My name wasn't mentioned. Not in the first paragraph. Not in the second. Not in the entire page I could see. I stood there for a long time. Long enough for the fridge motor to kick on. Long enough to hear the back gate click open. Linda walked in through the mudroom, balancing a grocery bag and a purse. "Oh, Daniel," she gasped, almost dropping the bag. "You scared me." "Door was open," I said. She glanced at the counter, then quickly back at me. "I didn't think you'd come by." "I brought the plumber's receipt." She nodded, setting the bag down. "Thank you, honey. I meant to ask you to email it, but Earl said maybe you'd just swing by." I waited. She looked down, then over at the will. Her hand hovered like she might turn the page or cover it, but she didn't. "We're still finalizing it," she said. "The lawyer needed our signatures by Friday." My eyes didn't leave hers. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask why. But she answered anyway. "We assumed you didn't need anything." She gave a small smile. "You've always been the one who managed, who figured things out." I nodded. That was all. No accusations, no demands. Just silence, the kind that doesn't need translation. I took the receipt from my pocket, folded once, and placed it gently next to the will. Then I turned. "Daniel," she started. But I was already at the door. I didn't slam it, didn't rush down the porch stairs or kick the gravel loose in the driveway. I walked. Outside, the wind had picked up. A dog barked somewhere in the next yard. Someone's chimes sang off-key. I got in my car, turned on the radio, and let static fill the silence until it found a station. Some old Motown song I didn't recognize. At the stoplight 2 blocks away, my phone buzzed. A message from Maggie. "You okay? Haven't heard from you since Sunday." I stared at the screen until the light turned green. Then I set the phone down and kept driving. You know what's funny? It's not always the words that hurt. Sometimes it's their absence. It's strange how a name not written becomes louder than anything ever spoken. The thing about rescuing people, they start expecting it, like it's your job, like it's your identity, like it's who you are now, permanently. I was coming out of Safeway, balancing 2 bags of groceries and trying not to trip over a cracked bit of sidewalk, when my phone rang. I didn't check the name. Didn't have to. Caleb's ringtone is a little chime I set months ago. Something light, deceptive, like a doorbell from a house that never felt like home. I answered anyway. "Hey, bro," Caleb said, voice already working itself into a rhythm. "Got a minute?" Sunlight bounced off the cars around me, hot enough to squint against. I unlocked my door and tossed the bags in the passenger seat. "Sort of," I said. "What's up?" A beat, just enough to feel rehearsed. "I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious," he said. "I need a little help, just to get through this launch phase." I closed the door, sat behind the wheel, and let the keys dangle from my fingers. "How much?" I asked. $3,000, he said quick. "Just to hold me over for 2 weeks, max." 2 weeks. "Yeah, man. You know how it is. Burn rate's crazy. I got devs in Serbia waiting on a transfer, and if I don't pay them by Friday, the whole back end's gonna fall apart." I didn't answer right away. I looked ahead, watching a man load garden soil into the trunk of his SUV. He moved slowly, methodically, the kind of pace you earn after too many years of lifting things for people who didn't say thank you. "You still there?" Caleb asked. "Yeah," I said, just thinking. "Look, I know I said last time was the last time, but this is real, Dan. We're close. Investors are circling. It's just, liquidity's tight right now. You get it." Liquidity. I almost smiled. He always used words like that, like seasoning. Sprinkle in the ones he thought I respected. "I lost my job," I said. Silence. "What?" "I'm out," I lied. "They let a bunch of us go, downsizing." Another beat. Then, "Well, damn," he said. "I mean, I didn't know." "Didn't think to ask," I said. It came out flat, not bitter. Just real. "Come on, don't be like that. I've had my head underwater over here." "Yeah. I mean, you're always good at landing on your feet. You'll bounce back." I said nothing. Then the tone changed. It always does when he senses he's not getting what he wants. "You know, for someone who talks about family and responsibility all the time, you're really not there when it counts," he said. "You're so damn selfish, man." And there it was. I took a deep breath, felt the air push heavy into my lungs. "Don't ever call me for money again," I said. Then I hung up. No apology, no backpedaling, just the sound of the call ending and the quiet that follows when you finally Finally say the thing you should have said years ago. I sat there a moment, forehead against the steering wheel, listening to the engine tick in the heat. Then my phone buzzed. A new voicemail. Not from Caleb, from Earl. I didn't need to press play to know what it would say. But I did anyway. "You're tearing this family apart." His voice crackled through the speaker. No hello, no build-up, just blame. "You think you're better than the rest of us just because you keep your distance. But distance doesn't make you right. It makes you cold." I deleted it before it finished. The groceries were starting to sweat, milk going warm, produce wilting in the heat. I sat there and let them. Later, Maggie texted, "Hey stranger, you alive?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I stared out at the lot. At the cart someone had left drifting toward a curb. At the way people avoided eye contact as they walked past me. You know something? There's no dignity in being needed for your wallet, and no peace in being punished for saying no. It's like trying to feed a fire with your own furniture. Eventually you realize you're just burning your own house down to keep someone else warm. And they never even noticed. Mom never yelled. She guilted. And sometimes, that's worse. It was raining. Not the kind that cleanses, just a cold, steady drizzle tapping on my windows like a kid too polite to knock hard. I was sitting on the couch with my laptop, flipping through old files, family photos I hadn't looked at in years. In one, I was 9. Wearing a Batman t-shirt, squinting into the sun, arms wrapped tightly around a golden retriever we never had long. Caleb was in the background, holding a juice box and looking annoyed that it wasn't about him. I don't know why I kept the photo. Maybe because even then, I looked like I was trying to hold something together. My phone buzzed. Voicemail. From Mom. I stared at it for a while before I hit play. "Hi, sweetheart. I wanted to say, I know things have been tense. I know you and Caleb don't always see eye to eye, but he's trying, Daniel. He really is. He's not perfect, but none of us are. I just hoped you could find it in your heart to give him grace." There was a pause. I could hear the clink of her wedding ring tapping against a glass, or maybe a kitchen counter. "You've always been the strong one, the steady one. That's why I depend on you. You may not see it, but you're the glue in this family." She exhaled, the way people do when they've said something that sounds kind but feels like a leash. "Anyway, I love you. I hope you'll call soon." Click. I didn't delete it, not right away. I played it again. This time I didn't listen to the words. I listened to the tone, the melody of her voice, the spaces between the sentences, the subtle tremor at the end, right where she wanted me to feel it. That's how she'd always done it. When I was 12, I got $50 from Uncle Joe for my birthday. Crisp bills in a red envelope. I'd been saving up for a second-hand telescope from a pawn shop downtown. But that night, Caleb cried. Said it wasn't fair. Said he didn't get anything. So Mom sat on the edge of my bed, brushed my hair back, and said softly, "Daniel, you're the big brother. You know how hard things are right now. Maybe you could show him how much you care. I gave him 30, kept 20, never got the telescope." That story repeated itself, in different costumes for decades, and somehow every time I told myself the same line. She's just tired. Just overwhelmed. But that story doesn't work anymore. She's not overwhelmed. She's practiced. The guilt didn't come from panic. It came from muscle memory. I stared at the voicemail for a long time. Then, finally, I tapped delete. But even after it was gone, her voice lingered in the room like steam from a kettle you forgot to turn off. I got up, poured myself a glass of water, stood at the window. Rain blurred the streetlights outside. A woman with an umbrella passed under the flickering glow, her shoes making a soft slap against the pavement. Somewhere downstairs, A neighbor's TV played a commercial with fake laughter way too loud for how unfunny it was. Then my phone buzzed again. Maggie. My uncle's an estate lawyer. Want me to ask him something for you? I stared at the message. Thought about the folder labeled Will and Estate Drafts still sitting on my desktop. Thought about the voice that had just asked me to show Grace, but not once had asked if I was okay. For the first time in a long time, I said something out loud, to the room, to myself, to whoever was listening. She loves the version of me that makes things easier, for her. And that version? He's tired. You know, some mothers don't mother their children. They mother their peace of mind. I used to dream of hearing her side. I just didn't expect it to sting. It was one of those mid-spring days when the wind didn't know what it wanted. Warm in patches, cold in gusts. I had stopped by unannounced, just long enough to return a key to the old storage unit. Linda opened the door with that startled smile she wore when visitors showed up without warning, the kind that tried to hide disapproval behind surprise. "Oh," she said, "you didn't call." "Nope," I replied, holding up the key. "Just passing by, thought I'd drop this off." She hesitated, then stepped aside. The house was quieter than usual. No Caleb, no Earl, just the low hum of the fridge and the faint tick of the wall clock, still 10 minutes slow, like always. I asked to use the restroom, not because I needed to. I just wanted a moment alone. Old habits die hard. Down the hallway, past the crooked family photos and the light switch that always sparked when flipped too fast, I noticed her bedroom door was ajar. A small breeze from the cracked window had ruffled a few papers on her vanity. And there it was. The drawer. She used to call it her therapy drawer, a place for all the things she couldn't say out loud. Old stationery, sealed envelopes, sometimes just scraps of paper folded in half. I don't know what made me open it. Maybe I was looking for a reminder that she was human. Maybe I just wanted to see if I ever mattered enough to write about. And there it was. A letter. My name on the front. No envelope. Just folded neatly in thirds. Dated 3 years ago. I sat on the edge of the bed, letter in hand. The paper felt fragile, like something that had waited too long to be read. Dear Daniel, I don't know if you'll ever see this. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to say these things out loud. You've always been the responsible one, even as a child, quiet, observant, never wanted much. That's why I leaned on you. I didn't mean to forget you. I didn't mean to expect so much. But the more you gave, the more I assumed you were fine. Strong. That's why I forgot to protect you. I was too busy worrying about keeping everything together. You were the one piece I thought could carry itself. Sometimes I wonder if I broke that part of you that used to shine. I hope not. I love you, in my way, even if my way was wrong. Mom, I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it did. The kind of hurt that already had a room inside you, already made itself at home years ago. This letter just rearranged the furniture. I folded it carefully, like it was something sacred. Slipped it into my coat pocket. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I wasn't ready to leave it behind. Back in the living room, Linda was wiping down the counters. The house smelled like lemon polish and old silence. I'll get going, I said. She looked up. You sure you don't want to stay for a cup of tea? I shook my head. Next time? I stepped outside. The sky was that dull gray that never quite decides if it'll rain. Then I saw him, across the street, hands in hoodie pockets. Caleb, just standing there, watching me. He looked like he wanted to say something, or maybe like he thought I did. We didn't wave, we didn't nod, just two brothers, separated by blood, raised by silence. I turned and walked toward my car, the letter still pressing lightly against my chest. You know, love without boundaries doesn't feel like love. It feels like guilt with good intentions. I didn't slam the door. I just stopped holding it open. It was one of those still mornings, where even the birds outside my window sounded uncertain. The sun was just beginning to warm the edges of the blinds, and the coffee pot gurgled like it had something to say. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the slow drip of dark roast into a chipped ceramic mug. The same one Maggie got me years ago. Navy blue with "Do the Work" printed in bold white letters. Today, I finally did. The folder was already on the table, will and estate, drafts. It had been sitting there since the day I walked out of that house and saw my name missing from theirs. This time, I opened it with purpose. Laptop open. Cursor blinking. Heart steady. I dialed the lawyer's number Maggie had given me. Her uncle. A soft-spoken man in his 60s who specialized in preventative heartbreak, as she once put it. "Daniel," he said after introductions, "what would you like to protect?" That word hit different. Protect, not punish, not revenge, not even fairness. Just protect. "Myself," I said. "And whatever I've worked for. I want to make sure it goes where I choose, not where someone expects." He didn't ask for context. Just took notes, confirmed details, and said he'd draw up a draft. It took 22 minutes. After the call ended, I left the laptop open and stared out the window. A kid rode by. On a scooter, his helmet too big, his grin too wide. I wondered what it felt like to move forward without looking back every few blocks. Then the phone lit up. Earl. Not a text, not a voicemail, a live call. I didn't move, just watched it ring. Once, twice, 5 times. And then I pressed it. Block caller. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt like cleaning a wound. "Daniel?" Maggie's voice buzzed in through speakerphone. I'd called her earlier to talk through the will. She had stepped out, but now she was back. "I did it," I said, "called your uncle. Told him everything." There was a pause, not the heavy kind, the respectful one. "I'm proud of you," she said. "How do you feel?" I looked at the table, at the rows of bills I'd paid over the years, names that weren't mine, amounts that weren't small, at the scribbled notes I'd made, the interest rates I'd negotiated, the memories I'd buried under receipts. "I feel," I said slowly, "like I'm not waiting anymore." Another pause. Then Maggie, gently, "You know it's okay to love people from far away, right?" I smiled. "I'm starting to." We didn't talk long after that. Just a few more words, some silence, and a promise to grab lunch soon. When the call ended, I stood, walked to the wall where an old family photo hung, our last Christmas together. Caleb was wearing a novelty sweater that still had the tag on it. Linda was mid-laugh. Earl's hand rested on her shoulder, too firm. And me? I was off to the side, smile tight, eyes elsewhere. I took it down, not in anger, not in ceremony, just gently. Set it face down in the drawer with the batteries and extra cords. Then I closed my laptop. It made a quiet click, but it sounded final. You know, letting go isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do for yourself. It was a Saturday. I just brewed coffee. And then, I heard 3 knocks that changed everything. Not urgent, not soft, just deliberate. The kind of knock that says, "We know you're in there, and we're not leaving." The morning light was sharp through the blinds. The apartment was still. Too still. I hadn't turned on the TV, hadn't started any music. The only sound was the coffee pot's last hiss and that voice in my head. Don't open it. But I did. There they were, all three. Earl, standing like he owned the threshold. Linda, holding her purse like it was some kind of shield. And Caleb, a few steps behind, hands in his pockets, eyes tracing the crack in the sidewalk. No one said anything for a beat. Just the sound of traffic in the distance and a sprinkler 2 doors down. I stepped aside. "You want to come in, or yell from the porch?" Earl walked in first, of course. Didn't even wait. Scanned the room like he was still trying to size me up. Linda followed, her eyes darting everywhere but mine. Caleb came last. He didn't sit, just leaned near the door like he might need to leave fast. I stayed standing. Earl started. "So this is how it is now? We get blocked, ignored, after everything?" I raised an eyebrow. "Everything? You know damn well what I mean. The years, the sacrifices, the opportunities we gave you." "Like the opportunity to bail you out of foreclosure?" I said. My tone was flat. Not angry, just done. Linda flinched. "Daniel, please. That's not why we came." "No?" I crossed my arms. "Because it feels a lot like that's exactly why you came." Earl stepped forward. "You think this attitude makes you better than us? You've always been distant. Difficult. Cold," I laughed. "Just once, sharp. And yet somehow still useful when bills needed paying." Caleb shifted, still silent. Linda sat down slowly. Her hands trembled a little. "I didn't raise you to be cruel," she said quietly. I looked at her. For a second, the old reflex kicked in. Reach out, soften, fix it. But I didn't move. "Mom," I said. "I'm not being cruel. I'm being clear. There's a difference." Earl shook his head. "So what now? You just cut us off? Pretend we're not your family?" "You made that easier when you wrote me out of your will," I said. Linda's voice cracked. "That wasn't meant to hurt you. We just thought you didn't need anything." "That was the problem," I cut in. "You always saw what I didn't need, never what I did." There was a long silence. Then Caleb finally spoke. His voice was low, unsure. "Dan, I didn't ask for all that stuff. I didn't want you to get left out." I looked at him. "But you didn't stop it either." He looked away. Earl's jaw tightened. "Families help each other. That's the bottom line. You don't walk away when things get hard." "No," I said. "You don't. But you do walk away when helping means losing yourself, when it becomes less about love and more about obligation." And then I said it, softly but clearly. "If I keep helping, none of you will ever change, and I won't either. That's the real damage." Linda's eyes filled. "So what? This is goodbye?" "No," I said. "It's a boundary. What you do with it is up to you." They all stood. No hugs, no drama, just air thick with things unspoken. As Earl reached the door, he turned to me one last time. "You're not the son we raised," I nodded. "You're right." And I closed the door behind them, not with anger, just with certainty. You know, not every knock is an invitation. Some are warnings. He tried to say something, but the wind carried it away. They were walking back toward the car, the three of them. Earl led, muttering something under his breath. Linda trailed behind, hugging her purse tighter than she probably meant to. Caleb was in the middle, like always. I stayed at the doorway. I didn't shut the door right away, just stood there, hands in my pockets, watching. There was something in Caleb's walk, slower than usual, like his shoes had grown heavy in the last few steps. He kept glancing back over his shoulder, like maybe he had more to say, or maybe he wished I had. When they reached the sidewalk, Earl didn't even wait. He yanked the car door open and slid in, slamming it harder than necessary. Linda paused at the passenger side, fumbling with her scarf. Caleb stood alone for a second. That's when it happened. A small folded piece of paper slipped from his back pocket. The wind caught it gently. Not enough to toss it across the street, just enough to carry it a few feet closer to me, fluttering across the concrete like a moth looking for a flame. I walked toward it without thinking. Picked it up. It wasn't sealed, just folded twice. One corner creased where it had been sat on too many times. My fingers hesitated over the edge, ready to unfold. Dan, his voice stopped me. He'd turned around. We were only 10 feet apart now. No one else was watching. Not yet. Dan, he said again, softer. I met his eyes. They weren't defiant, not smug, just tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from years of pretending you're someone else's idea of you. I raised the paper slightly. Yours? He nodded once. Quick, embarrassed. Then footsteps. Earl's voice cut through the air like an old, rusted blade. Caleb, let's go. Caleb blinked, like the sound pulled him back underwater. He stepped forward, took the paper from my hand, not roughly but fast, and shoved it into his jacket. I gotta, he started. I nodded. Yeah. He turned without finishing, jogged toward the car. Linda was already inside. Earl didn't look at him as he got in. They drove off without another word. I stood there for a while, long after the car disappeared around the bend. There wasn't anything I was waiting for. I just didn't want to go back inside yet. The silence felt heavy, but it wasn't empty. It held something. Something like grief, or maybe the outline of forgiveness that hadn't found its words. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the apartment, looked out the window, made tea, reheated it, poured it down the sink. Thought about texting Maggie, but didn't. Then I saw it. The old leather camera case, tucked beneath the hall table where I'd stashed it last year, maybe longer. I reached for it slowly. My hands remembered the latches even before my mind did. Inside, my old film camera. Still worked, still heavy in the palm, still smelled faintly of the dark room from my college days. I set it up by the window, opened the blinds halfway, let the moonlight spill across the kitchen tiles. I didn't take a picture. Not yet. I just looked through the lens, focused on the countertop, on the chair with the worn armrest, on the old photo of my parents, turned backward on the shelf. You know, some apologies don't need to be spoken to be heard, but they still echo differently when left unsaid. If they could write me out of theirs, I could write them out of mine. The lawyer's office sat on the 4th floor of an old brick building just off Division Street. I'd passed it dozens of times without noticing, probably because it never advertised. There was no bold sign, no sleek lobby, just a brass plaque by the buzzer and the sound of a desk fan humming steadily once you stepped inside. His name was Dennis, mid-50s, tie slightly askew, the kind of face that didn't blink when you told it hard truths. Maggie had recommended him, said he handled estates with more kindness than most families deserve. We shook hands over a wide oak desk. The chair creaked under me. Not much else did. So, he said, opening his notebook, you want to talk legacy? I nodded. I've spent my whole life trying to make peace with people who only called me when they needed something. I don't want my last act to be one more favor for people who didn't see me. Dennis didn't flinch, just flipped the page. Okay, let's get to work. We started with the obvious: assets, savings, personal property. He walked me through questions I hadn't expected, like what to do with my old photography. Archive turns out, someone might actually want that stuff someday. We talked about health proxies, burial preferences, even what kind of music I'd want played if anyone cared enough to ask. Then came the real part, the beneficiaries. "Do you have children?" he asked. I shook my head. "Anyone close?" "Maggie, but she doesn't need it. She's got her own life." Dennis leaned back slightly, waiting. I pulled a folded paper from my pocket. "I wanted to go to a scholarship fund for kids from Eastern Washington, first-gen college students, and part of it to a youth arts program in Spokane, for kids who can't afford cameras but have the eye." He nodded slowly, wrote it all down. "And the family?" he asked gently. "They wrote me out. I'm just returning the favor." I don't know why I expected it to feel colder, more bitter. But it didn't. It felt clean. We went over the paperwork together, every clause, every instruction. No room for misinterpretation, no vague promises or emotional landmines. When it came time to sign, I picked up the pen and paused. "This is the first thing I've ever written," I said, "where no one else gets to edit." Dennis smiled without words, just slid the final page in front of me. Pen to paper. Done. On the way out, the sun caught my face through the stairwell window. I squinted, blinked, and kept walking. The air felt different, like something tight had finally loosened in my chest. But then I reached my mailbox. Tucked among the usual flyers and water bills was a manila envelope. No return address. Just my name, scribbled in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. Inside, a photo. Christmas, maybe 10 years ago. Me, Caleb, Linda, and Earl. I was holding the camera remote in one hand, half smile frozen. Everyone else looked like they belonged in the picture. I looked like someone passing through. No note, no explanation, just the image. I stood there for a long moment, envelope in hand, until the elevator dinged behind me. You know, legacy isn't what we leave to blood. It's what we choose to pass to the future. I had taken that picture when I was 12. He tore it without looking. It was nearly dusk, the kind of hour where the sky turns soft and nothing feels quite finished. The windows were cracked just enough to let in the breeze, and some old Chet Baker track was murmuring through the radio. I hadn't planned to open the photo boxes again, but grief and clarity share the same drawer, don't they? Once you reach for one, you find the other. The album was cheap leather, the kind with sticky plastic sleeves and yellowing edges. Most of the photos had curled slightly, like they'd tried to shrink from memory. I flipped through images of childhood birthdays, soccer games, a camping trip I'd completely forgotten, until I saw the one. It was a picture I'd taken myself. Timer set, camera balanced on a folding chair. I was 12. Earl, my stepfather, stood stiff beside me in his work shirt, arms crossed. My own smile was thin but eager, the kind of expression kids wear when they're hoping for approval and pretending they don't need it. I remember that day clearly. We'd just come back from the hardware store. He was in one of his rare good moods, grumbling about lumber prices, but not at me. I'd printed the photo at Walgreens the next week and gave it to him in a little frame I bought with my allowance. He looked at it once, didn't even blink. "Pictures lie," he said. "They make things look softer than they were." And then he tore it in half. Right in front of me. No raised voice, no explanation, just a clean rip and a dismissive shrug. I told myself it didn't matter, that maybe I caught him on a bad day. But I'd saved the negative anyway, tucked it between notebook pages and, somehow, carried it through every move, every job, every year. Tonight, I scanned it. Took the pieces of that moment, digital now, ghost-like, and put them back together, adjusted the contrast, sharpened the edges, removed the small smudge near the bottom where my thumb had touched the lens. It took an hour, maybe more. When it was done, I printed it. Matte, finish, soft tones. And this time, I framed it for myself. Not out of love, not to forget what happened, But because the boy in that photo, he deserved to be seen, not discarded. I placed the frame on my desk, angled the light just right so it didn't glare, sat back in the chair, and watched it for a while. Watched him for a while. That skinny kid with the half smile and the too big t-shirt. Then I stood. Walked across the apartment to the hallway. There, on the wall, still hung the old family portrait. Linda, Earl, Caleb, and me, matching sweaters, forced grins. I took it down. No anger, no speech, just the quiet weight of letting go. You know. He didn't break the picture. He just revealed what was already cracked. I never thought my family would show up to one of my shows. Then again, I never invited them. The gallery sat on the corner of 5th and Monroe. It used to be a tailor shop, back when people still bought suits in Spokane. Now, it had exposed brick, dim lighting, and cheap wine in plastic cups. The kind of place where people speak softly, not out of reverence, but because they're trying not to admit they're moved. My name was printed on a little black card by the door. Daniel M., Ordinary Light, a study in absence. Underneath, the words, Opening Reception, 6 p.m., 9 p.m. For a long time, my photos lived in drawers, hard drives, folders titled Someday. Tonight, for the first time, they had walls. Maggie was the first to arrive. She brought lemon bars, homemade. For the table, she said, setting them down next to the guest book and a small tray of mints. You nervous? She asked. Only in every way possible. But my voice didn't shake as much as I thought it would when I gave the short welcome. Just a few words about light and memory and the spaces people leave behind. The photos weren't flashy, just glimpses of life. An empty park bench in December, a broken toaster on a sidewalk, the back of a bus seat with the number 12 scratched into it, and near the center, the one I almost didn't hang. Absent father, empty chair. A shot of a kitchen table at golden hour, one chair pulled out, steam still rising from a forgotten cup. People kept stopping at that one. A man with silver hair and painter's hands said, "It hurts, doesn't it?" I nodded. He patted my shoulder once and walked on. Then, around 7:40, the door creaked open again. It was Caleb. He didn't say anything. No dramatic entrance, no awkward hug, just wandered, looked. He paused in front of the kitchen chair photo, studied it. Didn't ask. Didn't assume. Then he walked to the table by the door, picked up the pen, and signed the guest book. I tried not to stare, but my eyes kept drifting back to the curve of his shoulders. How small he looked under the gallery lights. By the time I crossed the room, he was gone. Didn't take a lemon bar. Didn't say goodbye. But in the guest book, under a smudged ink line, he'd written, "I saw you." I just didn't know how to say it. No name. But I knew the handwriting. For a second, I stood frozen. Not with anger. Not even sadness. Just release. That's the thing about photographs. Sometimes the clearest image of someone isn't the one you capture. It's the one you let go of. A woman behind me tapped my elbow gently. "Is this one of your family?" she asked, pointing at another photo. An old shot of 2 boys on bicycles, just out of focus. I looked again. "No," I said softly. "But it could have been." They sold the house. I found out from Zillow. I wasn't looking for it. Just browsing listings, scouting locations for a backdrop shoot I had coming up. Old porches, cracked paint, yards gone wild. Things that tell stories even when no one's talking. That's when I saw it. 218 Crestwood Drive. Sold. 3 days ago. The photo stopped me cold. The front lawn had been trimmed, the shutters painted navy. Someone had staged the living room. White couch, fake ferns, bright pillows. It didn't look like the house I grew up in. It looked like a house trying to pretend. I scrolled through the gallery once. Twice. The kitchen looked smaller. The porch swing was gone. Then came the ding. An email from Linda. "We've decided to move closer to Caleb. It's quieter out there. Thanks again. For everything." No address, no phone call, no emotion. Just a transaction. I sat for a while, the cursor blinking in the reply window like it had something to say. Then I closed the laptop. A few days later, I drove out there. Not to confront them, not even to mourn. I just needed to see it one last time. The street was quiet. Same cracked pavement, same overgrown rhododendrons by the neighbor's fence. The for sale sign had been taken down, but the dirt where it stood was still raw. The blinds were closed. No cars in the driveway. The mailbox hung slightly crooked, just like always. I parked 2 houses down, walked slowly. My palms were sweating, though it wasn't hot. When I reached the porch, I didn't knock, didn't linger, just slid an envelope into the mailbox. Inside was a single photo, one I'd taken a decade ago, before everything hardened. It showed the house at golden hour, front lawn lit up, shadows long. Caleb's bike leaned against the porch rail. Linda's roses were in bloom. The swing still creaked in the breeze. No note, no explanation. Just the image. Just what it used to be. On the drive home, I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry, but I did feel light. Lighter than I expected. That night, I opened my phone, scrolled to the contact folder marked Family, deleted it, one name at a time. Linda, Earl, even Caleb. All gone, except one. Maggie. Her name stayed. And in that moment, I realized, closure isn't a ceremony, it's a decision. My birthday passed quietly. No phone calls, no balloons, no drama. I didn't tell anyone the date this year. Not even Maggie, at least I thought I didn't. Early fall had settled over Spokane, the kind that rustles gently through window screens and smells like wood smoke from somewhere you can't quite place. I was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing lukewarm coffee, watching a leaf turn in slow circles on the balcony rail. Then I saw it. An envelope, taped to my front door. No handwriting, no stamp, just white paper creased slightly from the cold. I peeled it off slowly, careful like it might be a trap. Inside was a printed email confirmation, order received, 20 archival prints of Ordinary Light series. Shipping to Daniel M. paid in full. There was no signature, no note. But my hands started shaking the way they do when something kind stumbles into your life too quietly for you to brace yourself. A few hours later, Maggie showed up with a half-melted ice cream cake and a thermos of hot cider. I didn't ask. She didn't say anything until we were sitting outside on the steps, watching the street darken into a soft amber hue. "I just thought," she finally said, "that maybe the world should see what you see." I nodded, throat tightening. "I thought you forgot." "Did you want me to forget?" I paused. "I just didn't want to expect anything. That's the part that always hurts." She leaned back against the railing, her boots knocking gently against the wood. "Well, you didn't expect this, so maybe this one won't hurt." We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't ask for anything but presence. When we finally sliced the cake, the inside was vanilla and mint. My accidental favorite, discovered years ago at a gas station bakery on a road trip we both swore we'd forget. "You know," I said, barely louder than the breeze, "this is the best birthday I've had since I was a kid." Maggie smiled, but didn't make a big deal out of it. She just nodded, passed me another paper napkin, and asked about the next shoot I'd been planning. Later that night, after the leftovers were packed and the porch lights dimmed, I pulled out my phone. Not to check for missed calls from my family, not to reread old voicemails or emails with too many thanks and not enough sorry. I opened my travel app and booked a cabin upstate. Just me, a forest, and a camera. Nothing performative, nothing borrowed. No one to ask if I'd bring dessert or pay the water bill. Just stillness. Before I went to bed, I looked at the envelope again. Sometimes love shows up late, and when it does, it doesn't bang on the door. It waits, taped quietly to the outside, like a reminder that someone still sees you. The final picture in my exhibit was of a child running into the light. No names, no faces, just motion. I didn't plan it that way. But somehow it felt right, like the photograph had chosen itself to close the story. It was a quiet winter morning, the kind where frost outlines every branch like lace, and the heater hums just enough to remind you you're not alone. My new apartment wasn't much. Just white walls, clean corners, and space that finally felt like mine. But there was peace in its emptiness. Everything inside had a reason to be here, including me. I stood on the small step stool, adjusting the frame one last time. The photo tilted just a bit left, like the child in the picture had shifted the gravity of the room by running too fast. I stepped down, took 2 steps back, and looked. The gallery was long over. The guests had gone, the wine glasses returned, the compliments stored away like postcards from places I never thought I'd reach. But this was different. This was mine. The child wasn't anyone specific. I'd taken the shot from a distance, somewhere upstate during my photography trip. They had on a yellow raincoat, arms flung wide, one boot barely touching the ground. You couldn't see their face, but everything about the frame screamed freedom, not from something, just toward something. I poured myself coffee. No sugar, 1 splash of cream. Set the mug down on the windowsill and cracked the glass open an inch, just enough for the cold to remind me the world was still turning. In the background, the radio played softly. Some public station, a segment about redefining family in modern America. "It's not just blood anymore," the host said, her voice gentle but firm. "It's who sees you, who shows up, who stays, even when you're not easy to love." I exhaled through my nose, half a laugh. Fitting. No more calls from Earl, no more texts from Linda, no updates from Caleb. Just the silence I chose. And this silence? It didn't sting. It settled. A soft chime pulled my attention. Voicemail. I didn't rush to check it. I let the coffee warm my hands. Let the photo on the wall stare back at me like it knew something I didn't. Then I reached for the phone. "Hi, Daniel," the voice said, unfamiliar but kind. "This is Amanda Rivera from the First Light Gallery in Bellingham. I saw your show downtown. That last piece, the one with the child in motion, it moved someone deeply. They asked if they could meet the artist. If you're open to it, give me a call." No pressure, no urgency, just an invitation. I didn't smile right away, not like in the movies. I just sat down, took a sip, let the moment stretch. And then I smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because I wasn't pretending anymore. Not to be okay, not to be strong, not to be their son, just to be. Years ago, I told someone I took pictures to prove I existed. Now I take them to remember how it feels to be free. They wrote me out of their will. But I wrote my own ending. I used to think loyalty meant saying yes, even when it hurt. But over time, I've learned something far quieter and far braver. Sometimes, walking away is how you finally walk toward yourself. If you've ever felt like the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who held it all together while others took it for granted, then I hope you know this. You deserve peace, not just praise. You deserve rest, not just resilience. And family? Family should never be the price you pay for belonging. The hardest part wasn't being left out of the will. It was realizing I'd been left out of love a long time ago and didn't want to stay there anymore. So here's my question for you. What legacy are you writing? Not in your money, but in your courage. Because at the end of the day, it's not about who remembers your name, it's about how you remember yourself. If this story made you pause or reflect, drop a 1 in the comments. Which state are you watching from? I'd love to know. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Let's talk below. And if you enjoy real stories that hit the heart, go ahead and subscribe. More are on the way. Until next time, take care of your peace.